In the last lesson, we learned about one common problem that LEGO programmers run into that causes the NXT to behave differently than they expected. Specifically, the program that's listed on the NXT's display as being ready to run is not actually the program that you want to run. In this lesson, we're going to talk about another common issue that may cause your NXT to behave differently than you might expect, and what to do about it. Sorry. There we go. Since you now know you need to confirm that the program listed on your NXT screen is the one you want to run, I don't need you to do anything special before starting this lesson. Now we're going to write a new program that isn't going to work the way we expect it to. In this program, we're going to have our robot say goodbye and then draw a picture of a hand on its screen. Okay, so let's go back to our software. Let's make sure that this Sleepy Crazy is saved. I'm just going to click on the Save Program disk. And I'm going to start a new program. I'm just going to say File New. And I'm going to say File Save As. And I'm going to call this program Goodbye. Okay. And what I said I want to do is have the robot say goodbye and then draw a picture of a hand on the screen. So we're going to start with a sound block, and goodbye. We'll get the computer to, or the NXT to say goodbye, and then we'll do a display block, and the picture that I want to use this time is called hand. There we go, hand. So just a tiny little hand wave goodbye. Okay, so I want you to download this to your NXT. Take a look at the NXT screen. And back up so you're running the right program. There we go, goodbye. And run it. Huh. So I didn't see a picture. Let's just try again. Huh. No picture. Okay. To understand what's happening here, we need to talk more about what happens when you hit the run button on the NXT. As you know, the NXT executes, that is, follows the directions for, each of the blocks on the sequence beam from left to right in order. After the NXT has executed the last block, it cleans up after itself. By clean up, I mean that the NXT turns off the power to any motors or light bricks that are connected to it, turns off its speaker, and resets the display on its screen. Let's talk about each of these steps in a little more detail. The NXT executes a program one block at a time, from left to right. At any given time, as far as the NXT is concerned, it's only executing a single block. Later, we'll learn about ways to make it appear as though the NXT is doing multiple things at once, but the truth is that the NXT only ever executes one block at a time. You should imagine that the NXT points an arrow at the block it's currently executing. When it's finished executing its current block, it moves on to the next one. And when it's finished that, it moves on to the next. And it continues executing block after block until it completes all the blocks on the sequence beam. Once it realizes that it's completed the execution of all the blocks, the NXT, being a polite and well-behaved piece of equipment, cleans up after itself. It turns off all the power to the motors, turns off any light bricks you might have used, turns off the speaker, and resets the display on its screen to let you know it's ready to run again. With this in mind, let's go back and look at our program. If you believe that the NXT is working correctly, and trust me, mine is, then we have to believe that the NXT runs the sound block, then it runs the display block, and then it cleans up. When we ran our program, we did hear the NXT say goodbye, so we know the first block worked. Please trust me when I tell you that the NXT did actually display that hand up on the screen. The catch is that it displayed it for so brief an amount of time before cleaning up that our eyes couldn't see it. And now we come to the crux of the problem. Different blocks take different amounts of time to execute. Let's look at the two types of blocks that we used in our program. When you play a sound, the default behavior, that is the standard behavior, is for the NXT to wait until the sound is finished before moving on to the next block. You can actually change that in the configuration panel. If you look at the configuration panel for our sound block, the wait for completion box is checked. That means that the NXT shouldn't move on to the next block until the sound block is done playing its sound. So the NXT points at the sound block until it's done saying goodbye, and then it moves on to the display block. In contrast to the sound block, the display block doesn't have any sort of wait for completion option. And that makes some sense if you think about it. After all, what does it mean to wait for a picture? As far as the NXT is concerned, when it's told to display a picture, it does so, and then it leaves the picture on the screen until it's told to change it. The display block does offer you a checkbox labeled clear, and the default, that is the standard practice, is for that box to be checked. Clear is NXT shorthand, meaning before you draw on the screen, clear off anything that's already on the screen. Think of it like erasing a whiteboard before you begin to draw on it. And so here's our problem in a nutshell. The NXT does exactly what we want it to do. It does play the sound, and trust me, it does display a picture. But we want the NXT to do the sensible thing and to show us the picture for a second or two before it cleans up. But the NXT doesn't have sense. It doesn't know any better. It does what it always does. It executes each of the blocks in order and then cleans up. If we want it to wait, we need to tell it to wait. So let's just do that. What we need to do is we need to tell the NXT to wait for a couple of seconds before cleaning up. And we're lucky because if you hover over this hourglass, there's a little wait time block here. And we can click on that and drag that over, let go. And this is a wait for a certain number of seconds block. And right now it's set at 1 second. I'm going to hit 2 and then hit enter. And now this block is going to wait for 2 seconds and then enter. Let's download and let's see what's happening on my screen. So I'm going to run the program. Hooray! The robot did what I told it to. It said goodbye, then it showed me the picture, and then it waited a couple of seconds before it reset the screen. The process of walking through a program step by step is known as tracing a program. So let's trace our final version of this program. There we go. The NXT starts off on this sound block. It sends the command to its speaker to say goodbye and waits till the phrase is finished. After completing the sound block, the NXT moves on to the display block. It erases the screen, since the clear box was checked, and then draws a hand on the screen. At this point, it declares itself done executing this display block and moves on to the next block. Now the NXT arrives at our wait block. We set the wait time for 2 seconds, so the NXT points at this block for 2 seconds. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. Okay, done that block. Finally, our NXT realizes that it's done running our program. So it does its cleanup routine, which just happens to include resetting the screen. So let's just review what we've learned in the last 2 lessons. We've seen 2 situations in which your NXT may not do what you expect it to do. In the previous lesson, we didn't notice that the program listed as ready to run on the NXT screen was not the program we intended to run. In this lesson, we assumed that the NXT was smarter than it really is, and didn't know that we had to explicitly tell the NXT to do something. In this case, wait for 2 seconds.